One fateful night, a family slaughtered. A 17-year-old girl found with the murder weapon. They called her a killer. But what if they were wrong? What if the truth is more terrifying than anything the police found? Some secrets refuse to be buried, and some eyes are not empty. What is the truth? I'm Clyde. Let me tell you the full story on the Best Mystery Book Podcast.
Macintosh, Virginia, January 15th, 2013. Sin was a mystery. Some believed their sins went unnoticed and could be committed without consequence. Others repented in the conviction that an omnipotent God witnessed all discretions and forgave unconditionally. The shooter, dressed in boots and a long, sweeping trench coat, believed something else: that the most egregious sins should always be noticed and never forgiven, and that those who commit them should be punished. The shooter climbed the stairs silently while the family slept. At the top of the staircase, the figure approached the bedroom and used the barrel of the shotgun to push open the door of the master suite. The hinges creaked and disrupted the otherwise quiet home. The door came to a rest with just enough space to pass through the door frame. The shooter slipped inside and walked to the foot of the bed. The soft breathing of the woman could be heard between animalistic snores from the man lying next to her. The shooter lifted the shotgun and secured it, tight to the shoulder, right cheek against the cold metal, so that the barrel pointed at the snoring man. A finger settled over the trigger, paused momentarily, and then twitched, unleashing a deafening blast. The sleeping man's flesh exploded as buckshot tore into his chest. Disoriented, his wife sat up quickly. In her confusion, she never saw the shooter standing at the foot of the bed or the barrel of the shotgun rotating toward her. A second blast sent the woman's torso ricocheting off the headboard. Reaching into the pocket of the trench coat, the shooter removed 3 photos and dropped them onto the bed. As the ringing of the gunshots dissipated, floorboards creaked outside the bedroom. Quickly, the shooter cracked the barrel of the shotgun open, allowing the spent shells to sail into the air. With hands protected by latex gloves, the shooter retrieved 2 live shells from the second trench coat pocket, inserted them into the smoking chamber, and snapped the barrel closed before aiming toward the bedroom door. An eternity passed until the hinges whined again as the door opened fully to reveal a young boy standing in the doorframe. Raymond Quinlan was 13 years old, a troubling age for the shooter, old enough to be a viable witness, but young enough to make the next decision challenging. As Raymond struggled to understand the scene before him, the shooter allowed no time for the boy to orientate himself. The barrel of the shotgun was trained at the boy's chest, and a third deafening blast filled the home. As the concussion ricocheted off the bedroom walls, melancholy began to settle in but was quickly brushed aside. There would be time for despondence when the mission was over. A job that moments earlier had been complete was now only 3/4 finished. The shooter walked quickly from the bedroom. Raymond lay in the hallway, an expanding pool of blood seeping across the hardwood. A quick glance back into the bedroom allowed the spent shells to stand out against the carpet where they'd landed, but they were not a worry, nor was the gun itself. In fact, the plan had been to lay the weapon at the foot of the bed when the night was over, but Raymond had spoiled everything. Stepping over his body, the shooter hurried down the hall to the far bedroom. There was another family member in the house that now demanded attention. Reaching the end of the hallway, the shooter used the barrel of the shotgun to push open the bedroom door. This time, however, the door did not budge. It was latched shut. Twisting the handle and finding the door locked, the shooter lifted a knee and aimed a boot heel at the doorknob. The wood splintered but did not give. A second effort burst the door open and sprung the top hinge from the frame, so that the door hung crooked from the jam. Entering the room, the shooter saw that the bed was empty, but the covers were tousled. Placing a palm to the sheets, the bed was warm from where someone had been sleeping just moments earlier. As the shooter turned from the bed, attention fell to the closet. The wicker door was closed. Walking over, the shooter used the barrel of the shotgun to tap on the door. When no answer came, the shooter turned the handle and slowly pushed the door open. But the closet, like the bed, was empty. It was then that the cold chill of night drifted across the back of the shooter's calves, below the hem of the trench coat. Across the room, the window curtains twirled as they filled with the night air that passed over the sill. After rushing across the room, the shooter ripped the curtains to the side and pushed the window fully open. The screen lay on the walkway below, broken free from the frame when the final family member had escaped through the window. It was a problem, a serious error created by careless miscalculation, but not the only one the shooter committed that night. Part 1. The final witness. If it bleeds, it leads. Garrett Lancaster. Fall 2013. Chapter 1. District Courthouse, Thursday, September 26, 2013. 3:05 p.m. Garrett Lancaster walked to the courtroom podium as television. Cameras recorded his every move, and millions watched the live coverage. The defamation trial of Alexandra Quinlan versus the state of Virginia had captured the attention of the nation. Ever since the night the Quinlan family was slaughtered and the 17-year-old daughter was arrested for the murders, the country had been fascinated with Alexandra Quinlan. First, when she was accused of the crime and labeled a sadistic killer. And later, after she was exonerated when evidence surfaced that proved her innocence. And especially now, when Alexandra had turned around and sued the state of Virginia, claiming that the McIntosh Police Department and the Allegheny District Attorney's Office had not only botched the investigation into her family's murder, but ruined her life in the process. Because of the media attention the Quinlan murders had received, Alexandra's defamation case had been fast-tracked. Predicted to last 2 weeks, the trial was right on schedule. For the first few days, Monday through Thursday morning, the jurors had listened to testimony from a careful list of witnesses Garrett Lancaster had called in strategic order. Now, Garrett had Thursday afternoon and all of Friday to finish presenting his case. He planned to fill those hours with testimony from just 2 individuals, his final witnesses. If things went according to plan, the state's defense attorneys would sit silently for the final 2 days of the prosecution's case. They wouldn't dare go after the testimony they heard today, and wouldn't so much as think of cross-examining his witness tomorrow. Garrett knew the untenable position he was about to put the state's defense team in. He knew this because Garrett was usually the attorney doing the defending. It was only through a bizarre set of circumstances that he found himself in the unusual position of being the prosecuting attorney, representing Alexandra Quinlan in her defamation suit against the state of Virginia. The managing partner at one of the biggest defense firms on the East Coast, Garrett was a defense attorney by trade, and therefore in the unique position of knowing his opponents inside and out. Garrett had designed his strategy carefully, despite the temptation to allow the jury to hear testimony from his 2 star witnesses earlier in the week. At the start of the trial, when juries were easy to impress, he instead saved their testimony for now. Thursday afternoon and Friday morning. The plan was to wrap things up the following morning before lunch, and then persuade the judge to adjourn for the weekend. Garrett wanted the testimonies from his final 2 witnesses, as well as their faces and tears and cracking voices, to be fresh on the jury members' minds as they headed into the weekend. He wanted the testimony to linger for 2 long days before the jury reconvened Monday morning to listen to the attorneys for the state of Virginia mount their full, unfettered defense against Alexandra's claims that the McIntosh Police Department was incompetent and that the Allegheny District Attorney's Office was corrupt. "Your Honor," Garrett said after reaching the podium. Dressed smartly in a crisp navy suit and yellow tie, he carefully arranged his notes in no hurry, putting forth a sense of composure and confidence. He knew a television audience of millions was tuned in, and he did not shy away from the attention. In his mid-50s and handsome, Garrett knew how to use his presence to work a jury, and was no amateur when it came to high-profile cases. The prosecution calls Donna Koppel, the first officer to arrive at the Quinlan home on the night of January 15th. Donna Koppel was the first into the house, the first up the stairs, and the first to witness the carnage in the master bedroom. The 4 other police officers who had responded to shots fired at 421 Montgomery Lane had already taken the stand. Garrett had expertly used the officers' testimonies to lay out for the jury exactly what was found the night the officers entered the Quinlan home. Their testimonies were identical. They'd each described the bloodshed of a family slaughtered in the middle of the night. They'd each testified about finding a young girl, identified as Alexandra Quinlan, sitting on the floor of her parents' bedroom, holding the shotgun that had been used to kill her parents and brother. Garrett hadn't attempted to sugarcoat or soften the officers' recollection of the scene. In fact, he made sure each offered painstakingly detailed accounts of that evening, from arriving at the scene, to climbing the stairs, to stepping over Raymond Quinlan's body in order to gain access to the master bedroom, where Dennis and Helen Quinlan lay dead in their bed. It was part of Garrett's strategy, initiating each officer's testimony and eliciting it in step-by-step detail, had essentially diffused the defense cross-examination. Nothing more could be ascertained from the witnesses. Garrett had not refuted any of the officers' testimonies about what they had seen and found when they entered the Quinlan home. Instead, Garrett took the officers' recollection as gospel and confirmed that each officer's testimony matched perfectly with that of the others. A gruesome night that had shocked each of them to their core, and a disturbing crime scene that had gone on to astonish the nation. Earlier in the week, Garrett had called forensic specialists to the stand who testified that the gun used to kill the Quinlan family was a Stuger Coach side-by-side, 12-gauge break action shotgun belonging to Mr. Quinlan. In court on Tuesday morning, Garrett had dramatically presented the shotgun to the jury. Many jury members, when Garrett asked, admitted that outside of television, they'd never seen a gun before. Garrett knew from jury selection that 8 of them had no experience with guns, and that 4 were registered gun owners, holding the weapon that had been used to kill 3 people, and allowing the jurors to see it up close, was startling. But this too was part of Garrett's plan. He did it so that when he brought the gun out again tomorrow morning when he questioned his final witness, it would seem less lethal and more ordinary. The gun would not cast Alexandra Quinlan as a deranged teenage killer, but as the clever young woman she was. But that bit of showmanship was for tomorrow. Today, he stood at the podium and listened to Donna Koppel's heels click as she walked up the courtroom's center aisle to whispers from her fellow officers in the gallery. The entire McIntosh police force considered the testimony Dawn was about to give a betrayal. Things had gotten so bad leading up to the trial that Officer Koppel had taken a leave of absence from the McIntosh Police Department. The leave was scheduled to last for as long as the trial went on, but Garrett suspected the chances were slim that she would ever return to the McIntosh police force. Donna pushed through the wooden partition and walked past Garrett. He noticed the quick sideways glance she gave him on the way. If looks could kill, he'd have fallen dead on the floor. Instead, from Donna's brief eye contact, he read her predominant thought. I hope to hell you know what you're doing. Donna sat in the witness box. Please raise your right hand, ma'am, the judge said from the bench to her left. Donna did as instructed. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. I do. Counselor, the judge said, nodding to Garrett. Garrett took a moment as he stood behind the podium to turn a few pages in his notebook. The stall was not to impress the jury with his command of the courtroom this time. It was for Donna to give her an opportunity to gather herself with a few extra breaths. When Garrett saw that she was steady, he found his place in his notebook and looked to the witness stand. Koppel, Garrett said. Can you please state for the court your role inside the McIntosh Police Department? I'm a police officer. How long have you been employed by the department? 18 years. And you've served as an officer the entire time? Yes. Are you currently working as a police officer? I'm on leave presently. Why is that? Donna swallowed. My testimony this afternoon is not popular inside the McIntosh police force. It's not popular, but it will not be dishonest in any way. Am I correct? You're correct. Why do you think your testimony will be unpopular? Donna hesitated and took a brief glance into the gallery and at her fellow officers. Because it goes against the narrative. What narrative is that? The one set forth by the McIntosh Police Department about what happened on the night of January 15th, both at the Quinlan home and then later at police headquarters. Okay, Garrett said. But since no one here is trying to win a popularity contest, only seeking justice for the errors made that night, I believe your testimony is vital, even if it's not respected by your colleagues. Do you agree? Objection, the state's attorney said. Sustained, the judge said. Garrett nodded at the judge and looked back to Donna. Before we begin, can you let the court know how you and I are related? We're married. Garrett walked from behind the podium and approached the witness stand. Hi, he said when he was next to her. Donna smiled, and the jury members let out quiet laughs. Hi, Donna said. On January 15th of this year, were you on duty working the overnight shift? Yes. Did you receive a call that night? Yes. I was on my routine patrol route when I received a call for shots fired at a residence. What did you do? I immediately responded. I was just a few blocks away. Were you the first officer on the scene? I was. Can you take us through that night, Officer Koppel? From the moment you first arrived at the scene and describe what you did and what you observed. Donna took a deep breath, and Garrett felt her nerves. No matter how many times they rehearsed this at home, there was no way to recreate the stress of sitting on the witness stand and talking to a packed courthouse with 12 jurors hanging on your every word and television cameras rolling. Come on, baby, Garrett encouraged his wife with a subtle nod. You've got this. McIntosh, Virginia, January 15, 2013, 12:46 a.m. Donna pulled her cruiser to the curb and aimed the vehicle's spotlight at the front of the house, illuminating the two-story home against the otherwise dark neighborhood. She was responding to a 911 call of shots fired at 421 Montgomery Lane, and was the first officer on the scene. Well past midnight, there were no lights glowing from inside the house, and other than the few neighbors loitering outside the scene was quiet. A man walked up to the squad car as Donna was climbing out. She held him at bay with an outstretched arm and a hand on her gun. The man stopped his advance and held his hands up. I live next door, he said. I'm the one who called 911. Donna kept her attention simultaneously on the house, the man in front of her, and the growing crowd of neighbors slowly gathering around her. What happened? She asked. I was watching television when I heard a loud bang. I muted the TV, and then heard another. So I opened my back door and stepped onto my deck. A few seconds later, I heard a third bang. Only this time I was outside and recognized it immediately as a gunshot. Shotgun? Probably a 12 gauge. I'm a hunter, so I know that sound. Donna pointed at the house where her spotlight was directed. You're sure the shots came from that house? Sure as shit, ma'am. Excuse my language. Inside the house? Yes, ma'am. Keeping her eyes on the front door, Donna grabbed the radio clipped to her shoulder. This is Officer Koppel at the scene for calls of shots fired at 421 Montgomery. Go ahead, officer. I have a witness who confirms shots fired from inside the home, requesting backup as I assess the house. Roger that. On the way, 3 minutes out. I've got plenty of guns, ma'am, the helpful neighbor offered. Just say the word, and I'll give you all the backup you need. Stay put, she told him as she headed toward the house. Her shadow grew longer as she strode through her car's spotlight, until the black image climbed the front of the house and stood over her like a phantom. She removed her flashlight from her belt and shined it through the front windows, but curtains blocked her view. When she reached the front porch, she banged her flashlight against the door. "Police, open the door." When there was no answer, she looked behind her to see the group of neighbors watching from the street. Thankfully, another cruiser's lights blinked in the distance as reinforcements arrived. A minute later, she was standing on the front porch with two other officers. A third had gone around back to check things out, and now his voice crackled over the radio. "Quiet back here. No lights, no signs of life." Since Donna was the first to arrive, the scene was hers to command. She reached for the handle of the front door and was surprised to find it unlocked, the door clicking open as soon as she twisted the knob. She looked at her fellow officers, who nodded their heads. With weapons drawn, they entered the house. Chapter 2. District Courthouse, Thursday, September 26, 2013, 3:30 p.m. Garrett walked back to the podium and set his hands calmly on the drish. Sides of the lectern. He consulted his notes. That moment, Officer Koppel, as you entered the home. What was your state of mind? What were you thinking? Donna paused a moment. I was nervous. You had a witness who lived next door to the Quinlans tell you that he distinctly heard gunshots emanating from inside the Quinlan home. Nervousness would be a fair emotion for anyone to feel. But what else did you and your fellow officers feel? Objection, Bill Bradley said. The government's lead attorney in the case of Alexandra Quinlan versus the state of Virginia. Officer Koppel can't offer her opinion on how the other officers felt that night. Sustained, the judge said. Besides being nervous, Garrett continued, what else did you feel? A lot of adrenaline. So you were nervous and filled with adrenaline. In your opinion, the other officers felt the same way. Objection, Bill Bradley said. I'm asking Officer Koppel about her mindset when entering the house, not her fellow officers. Overrule, the judge said. Go ahead. So you were nervous, and you were filled with adrenaline, and you felt that your fellow officers were experiencing the same emotions. Yes. Had you ever before in your 18 years on the Macintosh police force responded to shots fired or to a call involving an active shooter? No. Had any of the other officers with you that night ever responded to such a call? No. So entering the home with a suspicion that there was an active shooter inside was a new experience for you? Yes. Other than department training on such an event, you had no practical experience? No. Is it reasonable to say, Officer Koppel, that handling a stressful, dangerous, and unique situation with which you had no previous experience opened the door to the possibility that things could be handled poorly? Donna paused, then swallowed hard. Yes. Nervous and filled with adrenaline. Is it possible that the 4 officers who found themselves in a situation they had never before been part of could have misinterpreted the scene inside the Quinlan home? Yes. Knowing what you know today, would you have handled that night differently? Tears welled in Donna's eyes as she answered. Yes. Can you tell the court what you found when you entered the Quinlan home on the night of January 15th? Donna took a deep breath to settle her nerves, blinked away the tears, and told the courtroom what she and her fellow officers discovered inside the home. Macintosh, Virginia, January 15th, 2013, 12:54 a.m. Hello, Donna yelled as she walked into the house, her pistol trained in front of her. Police! Is anyone home? It was approaching 1 in the morning. The house was dark, and the last thing she wanted was to surprise a gun-owning homeowner in the middle of the night, should this be one colossal misunderstanding. Anyway, she and her colleagues made as much noise as possible from the foyer. Police, she said again. Is anyone home? Police officers are in your home, another officer yelled. Is anyone here? The house responded with eerie silence. They split up, each clicking on lights as they moved through the first floor. Nothing was out of place, and there were no signs of forced entry. Donna clicked on the foyer light. The upstairs hallway was protected by a spindled railing that overlooked the open-ceilinged foyer. She started a slow climb up the stairs, her gun out in front of her. As she neared the landing of the second story, she was able to see the far end of the hallway through the spindled railing. One of the bedroom doors was badly damaged and hanging from the frame. "Up here!" she yelled to the other officers, who gathered quickly with guns drawn and raced up the stairs to join her. "Bedroom at the end of the hall. Door looks like it's been broken down," she said, still crouching on the stairs and unable to see the master bedroom to the right of the landing. "I'll lead," she said. "You cover." The officers behind her nodded and they all started a slow creep, one by one, up the steps. As soon as Donna crested the landing, the carnage outside the master bedroom came into view. A young boy lay on the floor, the pool of blood around him, and the chest wound immediately told the story. The neighbor had indeed heard gunshots. "Holy shit," Donna said, gasping as her chest tightened. The officers quickly scaled the remaining stairs and crouched into shooter stances as they aimed their guns at the open door of the master suite. Donna had a sudden feeling that the shooter was still inside the house. She grabbed the radio off her shoulder. "Requesting backup and EMT at 421 Montgomery Lane. At least one gunshot victim inside the house." "Roger that," squawked a voice from the radio. "Backup is on the way. Dispatching EMT and ambulance." Donna pointed to the master bedroom. She tried not to look at the young boy on the ground, instead concentrating her focus on the bedroom and what might be waiting inside. As she got closer, she heard a noise and held up her hand for the officers behind her to stop. She listened until she confirmed what she thought she'd heard. Crying. It was coming from the master bedroom. She moved closer, and the sobbing grew louder. It sounded childlike. With her back against the wall, she yelled, "Police! You need to put your hands in the air! Do you understand?" More crying came but no verbal response. With adrenaline flooding her system, Donna eased the pressure she was applying on the trigger of her firearm. Knowing that it wouldn't take much to discharge, she stepped over the dead boy and into the bedroom. She took a shooter's crouch as she aimed her gun inside the room. What she saw confused her. A teenaged girl sat on the floor with her back pressed against the foot of the bed, her nightshirt stained red with blood, and a 12-gauge shotgun lying across her lap. Behind the girl, the bodies of two adults lay in bed, the sheets covered with blood. Freckled spatter coated the wall behind them. Donna tried to understand the scene. The bodies, the girl. The Lorno, Dondo, Pandora. "Put your hands in the air," Donna told the girl, pointing her weapon at the suspect. The girl continued to cry but followed the order by lifting her arms. While Donna kept her gun trained on the girl, another officer raced in and grabbed the shotgun off the girl's lap. The third officer pushed the girl face first to the floor and secured her hands behind her back. The fourth officer cleared the room and confirmed that no one else was present. Donna slowly approached the sobbing girl, nodding at the officer to give her some space. Besides being first on the scene, Donna was the only female present, and it seemed natural that she'd be the one who spoke to the girl. She helped the girl back into a sitting position, and in the process got a closer look at the blood that covered her nightshirt. "My parents are dead," the girl said. "Did you shoot them?" "My brother, too." "Did you shoot them?" Donna asked again. The girl's eyes were wide as she looked at Donna. "They're all dead." "What's your name?" The girl's cry softened. Alexandra Quinlan. Chapter 3. District Courthouse, Thursday, September 26, 2013. 3:50 p.m. "What was your first impression upon entering Mr. and Mrs. Quinlan's bedroom?" Garrett asked, still standing at the podium. "I saw 3 victims and a suspect with a gun." How would you describe the atmosphere inside that room? Tense. Our weapons were drawn and I was on edge. My first impression was that Alexandra had shot her parents and brother, and that she was a danger to herself and my team. And so you disarmed her. Yes, we followed department protocol for disarming an active shooter. And then you placed Alexandra in handcuffs. Yes. During those initial moments when you entered the master bedroom, when you stepped over Raymond Quinlan's body and saw Dennis and Helen Quinlan dead in their bed, the sheets stained red, blood spatter covering the wall behind them, and a teenaged stay-outer covering the wall behind. Girl sitting on the floor with a shotgun across her lap. Would you describe those moments as confusing? Yes. Officer Diaz, Garrett said, flipping a page on his notepad, who was the second on the scene, also described the scene as terrifying. Would you agree with that notion as well? Yes, we were all scared. Objection, Bill Bradley said. Again, Officer Koppel cannot offer testimony about how her fellow officers were feeling. Sustained. Your Honor, I understand that Officer Koppel can't speak for her fellow officers, but their testimony is already on the record. Each of them described feelings of confusion, horror, sadness, and a sense of being overwhelmed by what they found inside the Quinlan's home. I'm asking if Officer Koppel felt those same things. The objection was sustained, Mr. Lancaster, the judge said. Move on. Garrett took a moment before he nodded and readdressed Donna. Officer Koppel, in the moments after entering the Quinlan's bedroom, you felt some powerful emotions. Was confusion among them? Yes. Horror and shock? Yes. Sadness? Yes. A sense that the scene was overwhelming. Tears welled in Donna's eyes? Yes. With all those emotions coursing through you at once, was it possible that seeing a teenaged girl sitting at the foot of her parents' bed, parents who had clearly been shot, was it possible that you could have mistaken the scene for something it was not? Yes, we obviously did. With your emotions so high and wild, you assumed Alexandra Quinlan had killed her family. Is that correct? That was my assumption, yes. Did you ever, while you were at the Quinlan residence, consider that there was another explanation for what you found? Not while I was at the crime scene, no. Did you speak with any of your fellow officers about other possibilities that might explain what you found inside the Quinlan home? Donna shook her head. Not while I was at the scene, no. But there was a moment, Officer Koppel, wasn't there, when it dawned on you that your interpretation of the crime scene was inaccurate? Yes. When we got back to headquarters and I was watching Alexandra's interview, I began to suspect that we had gotten things wrong. What was the time frame from when you entered the scene and experienced all those overwhelming emotions to when this epiphany finally came to you? This realization that you might have gotten things wrong. It was probably 2 hours later. Garrett checked his notes. You responded to shots fired at the Quinlan home at 12:46 a.m. You called for backup and EMTs at 12:58 after entering the home. Detective Alvarez started his interrogation of Alexandra Quinlan at 3:20 in the morning. So almost 3 hours had passed from the time you responded to the call until the time you watched Alexandra being interviewed. Do I have the timeline correct? Yes. So after you entered the Quinlan's bedroom, it took you 3 hours to process images and emotions few officers ever experience in their careers. It took 3 hours to allow those overwhelming emotions to dissipate. 3 hours to allow reason and logic to attach themselves to the confusing crime scene and allow common sense to sort things out. Do I have that timeline correct? Donna nodded and wiped away tears. Yes. Garrett paused for effect. He stood without speaking long enough for the silence to make the jury uncomfortable, to make them alert and hyper-focused. When those emotions settled, Officer Koppel, and reason and logic came to you, what was it that you noticed? Donna cleared her throat. I watched Alexandra being questioned in the interview room, and assessed that she was no longer in shock, as she clearly had been when we found her at the scene. It was then that I saw a girl who was lost and confused about what she was being accused of. You noticed after 3 hours, a time period sufficient for Alexandra to process what had happened, that she finally understood she was being accused of killing her family. And when that understanding dawned on her, what in Alexandra's demeanor changed. She was no longer in a trance. It looked to me like she finally understood that she was being interrogated, and she looked scared and lost and like she needed help. So a 17-year-old girl, who was the sole survivor on the night her family was killed, needed help from the adults around her. Is that what you thought? Yes. Garrett walked from behind the podium to the front of the jury box. The idea that a young girl in that situation would need adults to protect her seems like common sense, doesn't it? Objection. Argumentative. Sustained. It seems like the first thing adults should do is protect this girl who just lost her mother and her father and her brother. But instead of help, what Alexandra Quinlan got were responding officers who misread the scene and jumped to conclusions, didn't she? Objection. Argumentative. Sustained. Instead of help, what Alexandra Quinlan got was an aggressive detective who, during an illegal interrogation of a minor at 3:30 in the morning, accused her of killing her family. Instead of help, what Alexandra Quinlan got for surviving that night was a 2-month stay at a juvenile detention center. Instead of help, what Alexandra Quinlan got was to be dragged in handcuffs from her home while a news crew recorded every detail and broadcasted it to the world. Instead of help, what Alexandra Quinlan got were weeks and weeks of headlines accusing her of killing her family. Because we all know that in the news media, if it bleeds, it leads. We also know that the 24-hour news cycle is quick to cast judgment, but slow to repent. So what Alexandra Quinlan got was a lifetime's worth of branding and slander to overcome. What Alexandra Quinlan got was the terrible nickname of Empty Eyes, given to her by an overzealous reporter and repeated by every news organization in Virginia and many around the country. All because a young girl had the audacity to look lost and confused in the moments immediately following her entire family being killed. What Alexandra Quinlan got was the exact opposite of what a civilized society and an ethical, impartial justice system should have given her. Objection. Bill Bradley was on his feet and angry. Your Honor, Mr. Lancaster is giving a closing argument when he should be questioning a witness. Mr. Lancaster, the judge said, you're testing my patience. Do you have a question for Officer Koppel? I do. Garrett's voice softened as he looked from the jury members back to Donna. Alexandra's family was killed on the night of January 15th. Alexandra survived. Officer Koppel, do you agree that the misconduct of the McIntosh Police Department that night, and in the weeks to follow, will negatively affect Alexandra for the rest of her life? Objection! Garrett watched as Donna began to cry. It nearly ruined him to exploit his wife's role in this situation. Withdrawn, Your Honor. I have no more questions. Mr. Bradley, the judge said, your witness. Bill Bradley simply closed his eyes and shook his head at the judge. He didn't dare make an attempt at cross-examination, not while the jury was so clearly emotional. Officer Koppel, the judge said, you may step down. The courtroom was silent as Donna left the stand and walked down the center aisle. This time, Garrett noticed, she did not make eye contact as she passed him, and there were no whispers from the officers in the gallery. Mr. Lancaster, do you have further witnesses? The judge asked. Just one, Your Honor, our last, Alexandra Quinlan. The judge looked at his watch. It was after 4:00 p.m. Considering the late hour, and assuming that Miss Quinlan's testimony will surely take up a substantial amount of time, we will adjourn until tomorrow at 9 a.m. The judge banged his gavel. The jury box emptied and the gallery filled with cloistered whispers as the spectators and reporters discussed what they had witnessed that day. The defense attorneys packed up and left. Garrett gathered his notes from the podium and sat at the prosecution's table. He took a few deep breaths, knowing that he had just one more day to make this right. Chapter 4. Macintosh, Virginia, Thursday, September 26, 2013, 6:08 p.m. Donna and Garrett sat on the back patio of their home and listened to the evening cacophony of chirping birds and buzzing locusts from the wooded lot that abutted the back of their property. Neither had spoken since they left the courthouse earlier in the afternoon. Emotions were high and nerves frayed, but so far their strategy had worked to perfection. Donna's time on the stand had taken them to the end of Thursday. Alexandra's testimony would start Friday morning, and if things went according to plan, the judge would adjourn for the weekend when Garrett rested his case, leaving the jurors to mull Donna's and Alexandra's testimony all weekend. The problem, Garrett realized now as he sat in silence with his wife, was that their words would stick with him as well. Ice clinked against the glass tumbler when he swirled the bourbon in front of him. He took a sip and allowed his mind to flash back to that night, to the cold night in January when this chapter of their lives started. He looked across the patio where Donna sat with her hand around the stem of a wine glass. Her eyes were closed, and Garrett knew she was thinking of the same night. Macintosh, Virginia, January 15th, 2013, 1:12 a.m. The Channel 2 News van pulled up to the address on Montgomery Lane, where the scanner they monitored had indicated there was an active shooter. The house was bathed in the spotlights from police cruisers parked out front. The news crew hurried out of the van to capture footage. The neighborhood was alive with red and blue lights pulsing from the tops of squad cars and an ambulance. A coroner's van had just backed into the driveway, and the news crew had arrived in time to capture the medical examiner entering the home. With any luck, they'd soon have prime footage of at least one gurney rolling out the front door, a white sheet draped over its occupant. The reporter tapped the microphone to confirm it was live, and then positioned herself so that the brightly lit home was behind her, the morgue van over her shoulder. This is Tracy Carr reporting from the Brittany Oak subdivision in Macintosh, where police have responded to shots fired inside the house behind me. As you can see, the medical examiner has just arrived, but at this time we have no word on how many casualties might be inside. Off camera, the producer gathered a couple of willing neighbors who agreed to be interviewed. "I'm joined now," the reporter said as a man entered the frame and stood next to her, by a neighbor who heard the shots and called 911. The reporter placed the microphone to the man's face. "I'll tell you all what I told the first officer when she got here. I was watching TV when I heard a loud bang. Couple seconds later, heard another. So I walked onto my back deck to see what was going on. That's when I heard the third one, and, 'cause I was outside this time, I knew right away it was a gunshot. I'm a hunter, and the noise registered immediately. Except nobody's hunting this time of night." "The shots were coming from inside your neighbor's house?" Tracy asked. "Yes, ma'am." "That's when you called the police?" "Yes. I was tempted to go over there with my own gun to see what was happening, but the police arrived real quick. A whole bunch of them are in the house now." "So you heard 3 gunshots?" "Yes, ma'am." The reporter turned to the camera and offered her audience a summary of what she knew. "Again, I'm at the Brittany Oak subdivision in Macintosh, where police are currently inside a home where at least 3 shots were fired. The medical examiner is now on the scene and entered the home only minutes ago." Just then, the front door opened and a female police officer led a teenaged girl out of the house, her hands cuffed behind her back and her shirt painted red with blood. Tracy Carr beelined to the end of the driveway with her cameraman close behind, arriving just as police escorted the girl into the street and toward one of the police cars. "Officer, Tracy Carr with Channel 2 News. Can you tell me what's happening?" The female officer put her hand up to block the camera. "Please step back, ma'am." Tracy reached the microphone as close as possible to the young girl's face. "Did you fire the gunshots that the neighbors heard?" The girl looked up just then and stared into the camera. Her eyes were vacant and black. "They're all dead," the girl said. A second police officer hurried down the driveway to push the camera away, but the cameraman recovered in time to capture footage of the empty-eyed girl being placed in the back of the squad car. The female police officer ignored the reporter's barrage of questions as she hurried into the driver's seat, turned on the sirens, and drove off into the night. McIntosh, Virginia, January 15th, 2013, 3:20 a.m. The detective arrived an hour after Officer Koppel placed Alexandra Quinlan in the interrogation room. Donna watched now through the one-way mirrored window as the girl sat alone in the hard wooden chair. A detective approached Donna. She knew him, but not well. "Officer Koppel?" the detective asked. She nodded. "Hi, Donna Koppel." "Romero Alvarez," the man said with a no-nonsense tone. "You were first on the scene?" Donna nodded again. "Yes, I responded to shots fired." "Give me a summary. I only heard second-hand information so far. I've got my evidence techs at the house now. I'll head over after this." The house was quiet when I arrived. I waited for backup before we entered. I first knocked on the front door. No answer. We discovered that the front door was unlocked. Inside, we found 3 victims, 2 adults. The parents, shot in their bed. 1 male child shot in the hallway outside the parents' bedroom. It was, the girl's younger brother. Donna lifted her chin toward the interrogation room. The girl was sitting on the floor in front of her parents' bed. "All 3 were dead." "Yes. A single gunshot wound to each of them. Chest shots. The girl had a 12-gauge shotgun on her lap. We're running forensics now to make sure it was the gun used to kill the parents and the brother. We also took samples from the girl's hands to confirm residue matches the gun." "Good work," the detective said. "Anything else before I talk to her?" "Yeah, we called Child Protective Services, but they said it'll be a while before they can get anybody out here. The girl's got no other family that we can find." "Anything else?" Donna paused a moment, not wanting to overstep. "We should assign her a juvenile officer advocate before you speak to her." The detective glanced at his watch. "I'm going to feel her out first. She's still in shock, so take it easy on her." Detective Alvarez offered a condescending smirk. "She killed 3 people. The very last thing I'm going to do is handle her with kid gloves." "I just meant..." "The problem with this world, Officer Koppel, is that we are not in more shock after something like this happens. It's just become part of our culture. It's her own family today, her school tomorrow, a movie theater the next day. And we're supposed to have sympathy for her, because she's in shock after mowing down her entire family. Give me a break, officer. This is an interrogation room, not a safe space." The detective stared at Donna, daring her to respond, before turning and heading into the interview room. Detective Alvarez sat across from the girl. Donna watched through the window. The girl looked up at the detective. "I'm Detective Alvarez." The detective's voice was clear as it came through the speaker positioned above the window. "I'm here to figure out what happened at your house." "My parents are dead," the girl said. Her eyes as empty now as when she was marched from the house and placed into the back of a police cruiser. "And my brother, too." "Yeah, the police officers told me about it, but let's start with your name." "Alexandra Quinlan." "Okay, Alexandra. Again, my name's Detective Alvarez and I'm here to help you, okay? But only if you're honest with me. If you lie to me, well then, I can't help you. You understand?" "Are you sure they're dead?" Alexandra asked. "I never really checked." "Yes," the detective said. "They're dead. The 2 adults at the house, They were your parents? Yes. And the boy was your brother? Yes, Raymond. How old are you, Alexandra? 18. I'm going to be 18 in a few days. Were you having an argument with your parents? She looked up at him. The first attempt at eye contact. She shook her head slowly. No. So what happened last night? Nothing. I just went to sleep after I finished my homework. Whose gun were you holding when the police arrived? The gun? Yes. You were holding a shotgun when the police came into your parents' room. Whose gun was it? My dad's, I think. You think? Where did you get it from? He normally kept it in the garage. So you got it from the garage? No. Then where did you get the gun, Alexandra? It was in the foyer. The detective paused, and Donna saw that he was attempting to piece together what little he knew about the scene so far. The gun was in the foyer of your home? Yes. Did you hide it there? Did I do what? Did you hide the gun in the foyer? No, it was just on the floor, so I picked it up. And that's when you shot them? The girl's eyes squinted and Donna saw her head cocked to the side. My family? Yes. Tell me what happened after you picked up the gun. The girl's eyes welled with tears. Are you sure they're dead? McIntosh, Virginia, January 15th, 2013, 3:30 a.m. Donna watched the interview through the viewing window. Her lieutenant stood next to her with arms crossed as he, too, watched what was taking place on the other side of the glass. Something's off, Donna said. What's that? Asked her lieutenant without taking his eyes off the interrogation room. He was hanging so closely on every word coming through the speakers above them that Donna got the impression he didn't even know she was present. Something's not right, Donna said. A family is dead, and this girl killed them. So I'd say that's an accurate statement. No, I mean with the girl. Look at her. She has no idea what's going on. She has no idea what Alvarez is talking about. You said it yourself. She's in shock. You know these kids plan these things based off whatever video game or social media is polluting their minds. Then, once they actually go through with it, they want to take it back. But there are no do-overs with murder. As Donna looked through the window of the interview room, she did not see a teenaged girl filled with remorse. She saw a confused girl who comprehended nothing about why she was being interviewed at police headquarters. She saw a girl who still hadn't fully realized that her family was dead. Donna saw something else, too, as she watched Alexandra Quinlan. It was the girl's night shirt that started Donna's epiphany, an innocent-looking pajama top covered in blood. Why, Donna wondered, would a girl who killed her family, an event that would have taken some serious planning and contemplation, wear her pajamas to do it? No, Donna said, shaking her head. We can't interview her like this. She's confused. Christ, Lieutenant, she doesn't know why she's here or what's going on around her. She hasn't even fully grasped the fact that her family is dead. We need to take a time out, pause this situation and think it through. Obtain proper consent, get this girl an advocate, and give her a chance. A chance at what? To get her story straight. Her parents are dead, so we can't get consent from them. It will be hours before DCFs gets anyone down here. We need to know as much as possible about what happened inside that house. As much as possible. As soon as possible. Stop the interview, Donna said. What? Stop the interview, Lieutenant, or I will. We are not stopping a goddamn thing until we know why this girl killed her family. How do we know this isn't some internet dare? How do we know other kids aren't planning the same thing tonight? He pointed at the window. She can tell us those things, and that's what Detective Alvarez is going to find out. Donna took a deep breath as she watched Alexandra for another moment. She sensed the thin ice she had stumbled onto and knew pushing her lieutenant any more would be considered insubordination. She turned from the window and walked into the hallway, grabbing her cell phone and dialing as she did. She looked at her watch. 3:35 a.m. She wondered if he would even answer, or if he was too sound asleep to hear the phone. "Hello," came the groggy voice. "Garrett," Donna said in an urgent whisper. "It's me. I need you down at the precinct. I know it's late, but I need you right away." McIntosh, Virginia, January 15th, 2013, 4:05 a.m. Garrett Lancaster pulled his car up to the McIntosh police headquarters at just past 4 in the morning. He wore a Washington Wizards ball cap to tame his hair, which had been wild and uncontrollable after his wife's phone call had pulled him out of bed 30 minutes earlier. He climbed from his car and started toward the front entrance, only to see Donna bounding down the stairs and jogging toward him. "What's wrong?" Garrett asked. "Long story, and we don't have time for me to give you all the details. I answered a call for shots fired at a residential address, got inside the home, and found a family slaughtered." "Jesus Christ," Garrett said, taking his wife's elbow. "You okay?" Donna shook her head. "I'm fine. It's the girl who needs your help." "What girl?" He watched his wife take a deep breath, collect her thoughts, and start again. "When I entered the house, I found 2 adults shot in their bed, plus a kid, a teen boy, dead in the hallway. For Christ's sake, just listen. I also found a girl sitting at the foot of her parents' bed with a shotgun across her lap. She's inside now being interviewed. She needs your help." "With what?" Garrett asked. "You're not making any sense, Donna. Are you sure you're okay?" "Listen to me, Garrett. The girl needs your help before she says something that will incriminate her, something that she can't take back." Donna took another breath. "I can't figure it out right now, in the moment. Everything is swirling together, but I don't think she did it. You need to go in there as her attorney and stop that interview." "As her attorney?" Garrett Lancaster was one of the top defense attorneys on the East Coast. Lancaster & Jordan was a powerhouse criminal defense firm Garrett had started 2 decades earlier with his partner. They had offices across the country, with the main hub located in Washington, D.C. Garrett Lancaster had a powerful reputation for defending those accused of heinous crimes. The irony of being married to a police officer was lost on neither him nor Donna. It was one of the reasons Donna had kept her maiden name. Besides that, it was common for female officers to do so. It kept their private lives private and prevented the perps they arrested from finding personal information about them online. In addition to avoiding predators out for revenge, her maiden name buffered her from Garrett Lancaster, a prominent criminal defense attorney whose job it was to keep the bad guys out of prison. Donna's job was to put them behind bars. "Please," Donna said. "I know I'm putting you in a bad spot, but please do this for me." Garrett tried to think of the right thing to say. "What if you're wrong? Then the truth will come out in a day or 2, and you punt the case to someone else. But if I'm right, they have a 17-year-old girl in an interview room in the middle of the night. She just saw her family slaughtered, and now they're grilling her for a confession without consent from a legal guardian. They'll keep the pressure on her until she tells them what they want to hear. And then it'll be too late." Garrett looked at the precinct building, lighted with spotlights shooting up the facade, a beacon of justice glowing in the middle of the night. He cocked his head toward the entrance. "Let's go." McIntosh, Virginia, January 15th, 2013, 4:15 a.m. Garrett followed his wife into police headquarters. Donna checked him in at the front desk, and Garrett obtained a visitor's badge that allowed him access into the building. Normally, defense attorneys were left to wander the halls until they found their way to wherever it was they needed to be. Inside a police precinct, defense attorneys were the equivalent of rats scurrying along the baseboards. Tonight, though, Donna led him straight to the interview room, where Garrett saw Donna's lieutenant watching through the room's window, along with 3 uniformed officers. Inside, he saw a detective in a suit talking with a hollow-eyed girl wearing an oversized nightshirt. Instinct pinched the muscles of his back together, pulling his shoulders apart and inflating his chest. He was frustrated at himself for not taking the time to comb his hair or climb into a suit, having to do this now in jeans and a wizard's hat. "Lieutenant," Garrett said in an assertive voice. The man watching the interview turned, as did Donna's fellow officers. Garrett felt their stares, but more so, he felt Donna next to him. She deflated a bit. These officers had entered the house with her, and had had her back as they'd stalked through the house looking to engage an active shooter. It was surely a traumatic and bonding experience for them all, and Garrett knew a pang of guilt had touched Donna's core for what she was doing. "I'm Garrett Lancaster, I'm representing." Garrett realized he didn't even know his client's name. "The girl," he finally said, pointing at the interview room. "I'm her attorney, and I'm going to need you to stop the interview." Lieutenant Marcus Gray looked over Garrett's shoulder and squinted his eyes at Donna. "What's going on, Koppel?" Donna tilted her head. "Ask Garrett." He looked back at Garrett. "What's going on, counselor?" "I need you to stop the interview, Marcus. I'm her attorney." "You called your husband?" Lieutenant Gray asked Donna. "You're trying to go over my head by calling your husband?" "I'm not going over anyone's head, sir. Something's not right. This girl deserves the same protections as anyone else. She shot up her goddamn family, Koppel." Donna took a deep breath. She deserves to know her rights and be protected under our Constitution. She was read her rights. Garrett held up his hand, as the girl's attorney. "Alexandra," Donna said, cutting her husband off. "AA Alexandra's attorney." "As Alexandra's attorney, I'm asking that this interview be stopped immediately." Garrett looked at his watch. "It's 4:20 in the morning, and this is now the 2nd time I'm asking, Lieutenant, if you're not keeping track. Believe me, I am." Technically, Garrett knew, only his client could request the interview to be stopped, which was why he had to get in there immediately. "We need to find out what's going on," Gray said in a calmer voice. "The only way to do that is to speak with the shooter." Garrett walked past Lieutenant Gray and opened the interview room door, then stepped inside. The detective looked over his shoulder, confusion on his face. "Can I help you?" "Yes, my name is Garrett Lancaster, Alexandra's attorney. The first thing you can do to help is stop asking my client questions and leave us alone. Please." "Your client," the detective said, standing from his chair. "I understand parental consent to interview Alexandra was not obtained." "It was not possible," the detective shot back. "Did you go through the proper channels to find my client's next of kin, who could in emergency situations be considered her legal guardian?" Garrett waved his hand. "I'm sure you did. But then, of course, if you were unable to find any family, you would need to go through the state's Department of Child Protective Services to obtain consent for a formal interview. I'm sure you did that too, Detective, but I'm just confirming. If you did all those things before you started the interview with my client, who is under the age of 18, and therefore considered a minor in the state of Virginia, then you and your department are in good standing, and I'll just need a moment alone with my client. But in the unlikely event that you conducted an interview on a minor without parental, guardian, or other legal consent, then you're likely in a shit ton of trouble and have a lot more to worry about than me ending this interview." Garrett stared at the detective. He watched as the man's eyes, which had a moment earlier been focused like laser beams on Garrett's, wandered off to the interview room's one-way window searching for his lieutenant, but only seeing his own reflection. "Give me a minute with my client?" Garrett asked in the same polite voice that he had presented the entire time. After a second, The detective headed for the door. "Detective," Garrett said, "please ask your lieutenant to turn off the camera and microphone while I have a word with Alexandra. I'm pretty certain you've already conducted an illegal interrogation of my client. Recording my conversation with her would put you in a world of trouble that so far you've just flirted with." Garrett offered a quick smile. "Thanks." Chapter 5. District Courthouse, Friday, September 27th, 2013, 9:12 a.m. Even as her legs did their part to transport Alexandra to the stand on Friday morning, Garrett noticed them trembling. It was her body's way of protesting her presence in the courtroom. She likely wanted to be a million places, other than sitting in a packed courtroom with television cameras aimed at her and the nation's attention hanging on her every word. But Alexandra had no choice. To win her case against the state of Virginia, her testimony was paramount. Without it, a win was unlikely. With it, Garrett believed, it was inevitable. When Alexandra sat in the witness stand, she reached for the glass of water and trembled it to her mouth. She had turned 18 since the night her family was killed. But the formal transition to a legal adult did nothing to stop her from looking like a scared child this morning. Garrett at once felt sorrow and confidence. He didn't want to put Alexandra through this, but knew it was the only way to achieve even a sliver of justice for what had happened to her. Looking like a scared adolescent girl made his job easier, and the opposing counsel's job nearly impossible. After Alexandra was sworn in, Garrett smiled at her. "Good morning," he said. Alexandra nodded and adjusted her glasses, which were thick and heavy. Hi. Can you please state your name for the court?" "Alexandra Quinlan." "Alexandra, we're going to cover some tough topics this morning. Things that will be difficult for you to talk about, and things that will be difficult for the court to hear. You and I have discussed these topics over the last few weeks, and you have indicated to me that you are prepared to offer your testimony this morning. Do you still feel that way?" Alexandra cleared her throat. "Yes. Are you nervous?" "Yes." "Me too. I always get nervous when I'm in court, so I'm right there with you." This was a lie, but Garrett wasn't under oath. The truth was that it had been a number of years since he'd felt any nerves in a courtroom. Alexandra offered a subtle smile. "If we start talking about anything you don't want to discuss, just let me know, and we'll move on." "Okay?" he asked. "Okay." Garrett paused for a moment before walking over to the witness stand. This gave the jury a moment to settle as they waited to hear from Alexandra Quinlan, a girl who they had all admitted during jury selection they'd seen in the papers and tabloids. Now, they were about to meet her in person. During cross-examination this week, the state of Virginia has attempted to put forth a narrative that the McIntosh Police Department did everything by the book in their handling of the Quinlan family murders in general, and Alexandra Quinlan in particular. Next week, when it's their turn to put forth their case, they'll tell us more of the same. Garrett looked over at the defense table. Other than accusing the wrong person in a triple homicide, and still to this day failing to bring the actual killer to justice, perhaps that argument works. Otherwise, is filled with a few holes. "Objection," Bill Bradley said. "Sustained." They want you to ignore a couple of early mistakes they made, and to concentrate only on how well they did after that point. But it's not the things they did correctly that has brought us here to this courtroom. It's all the things they did terribly wrong. "Your Honor," Bill Bradley said in an annoyed tone. "Mr. Lancaster," the judge said, "we discussed this yesterday. You are not making a closing argument. You are questioning a witness. Do you have a question for Miss Quinlan?" Garrett turned back to Alexandra. "The McIntosh Police Department feels that they treated you correctly. By the book, as I said, starting with the journey from your home the night your family was killed. Do you agree with that argument?" "No," Alexandra said. "Where were you placed after you were arrested?" Allegheny Juvenile Detention Center. How long did you stay there? 2 months. After 2 months, what happened? The charges against me were dropped and I was released. The charges were dropped, but for 2 months you were forced to fend for yourself inside a juvenile detention center for a crime you did not commit. Do I have that correct? Yes. The defense has argued that while you were at Allegheny you were treated well. Do you agree with that? No. But we've heard from your psychologist and your social worker, both of whom stated, under oath, that you have developed close relationships with them. Is that true? Yes. But it wasn't the professionals you had difficulty with while inside Allegheny, was it? No. Who did you have trouble with? The other kids. Can you tell us about those troubles? Inside Allegheny, you need to make friends to survive. Everyone is in these sort of cliques, like these groups, and you have to get in one for protection. Did you make friends? Yes. And did those friends protect you? When they could. But there were times they could not, am I right? Yes? What were some of the things you were forced to deal with inside Allegheny? Some of the other kids found leaked photos of the crime scene and taped them to the door of my room. Photos of your family from the night they were killed? Yes. They hung those pictures on your door to torment you. I guess I'm not sure why they did it, they just did it. Was the person who leaked the photos identified? Yes. Who was it? Detective Alvarez. That's what I was told. The detective who illegally interrogated you the night your family was killed? Yes. I would have loved to call Detective Alvarez to the stand to question him about this, but that became impossible after the detective took his own life just prior to the start of this trial. It appeared Detective Alvarez knew how badly he had mishandled your case, even if his superiors failed to admit it. Objection. Sustained. Move on, Mr. Lancaster. Alexandra, it doesn't matter how well the state of Virginia or the McIntosh Police Department did in the days and weeks after they traipsed you out of your house in handcuffs, while news cameras recorded every detail. It doesn't matter how well they did after they publicly accused you of killing your family. It doesn't matter how well they did after weeks of headlines labeled you as the empty-eyed girl who slaughtered her family. It doesn't matter how well they did after forensic evidence proved that you were not the one who pulled the trigger that night. None of what they did after all that matters because the damage had already been done, hadn't it? Alexandra swallowed hard. Yes. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the damage the McIntosh Police Department did to you. Garrett walked back to the podium. Alexandra, can you tell the court how old you are? 18. And how old were you on the night of January 15th? 17. You turned 18 a week later, correct? Yes. January 22nd. So, that made you a senior in high school at the time this all took place? Yes. After you were released from juvenile detention and all the charges against you were dismissed, did you go back to school for the spring semester? Alexandra shook her head. No, I didn't go back. Why not? I tried, but there were too many news cameras and reporters waiting for me at school each day. News cameras and reporters? Waiting at your high school each morning to ask you about the night your family was killed? Yes. Accusing you, in fact, of getting away with murder. Some of them, yes. And other students at your high school, how did they treat you? I lost all my friends because I guess it was too hard to hang around with me. Kids called me Empty Eyes. Empty Eyes. Where did that name come from? The reporter who was there that night, the night the police walked me out of my house. She captured this image of me, and in it my eyes look hollow and empty, I guess. So she started calling me Empty Eyes during her reports. Lovely. Was it difficult to be labeled that way? It was too difficult, in fact, for a teenaged high school student who had just lost her family to handle, Garrett said, looking at the jury. So, you stopped going to school? Yes. But you did complete your senior year and graduate, correct? Yes, I completed the spring semester through homeschooling and tutoring. But you never went back to school, no, daughter? You missed out on your senior year. The last part of it, yes? So no friends, no socializing, no senior ditch day, no prom, no graduation. No, I didn't do any of those things. And college? You had applied to and been accepted to several universities, is that correct? Yes. Before everything happened, I was trying to decide where to go. I was working with my parents on that. First semester of what should have been your freshman year of college is currently underway, but you're not enrolled at any university. Is that correct? Alexandra nodded. That's correct. I didn't think it would be possible to go to college with all the media and press and attention and stuff. Because reporters would have followed you to whichever campus you chose. Is that what you were afraid of? Yes. In fact, the press found out which universities accepted you, made that information public, and then protests took place at those schools, from Virginia Tech to Clemson to Georgia. Is that correct? Alexandra nodded. Yeah, certain organizations at each of those schools made it known that I wasn't welcome on their campus. Garrett looked back to the jury. A teenage girl loses her entire family, and because of our society's insatiable appetite for the morbid details of other people's suffering, and our constant desire for scapegoating and scandal, all of which was stoked by Alexandra being wrongly accused and publicly prosecuted, that girl wasn't allowed to properly finish high school. He looked back to Alexandra. So college became impossible, and your entire future will be marred by a police department's incompetence and a society's obsession with sensationalism of true crime. Do I have that right? Objection, Bill Bradley said from the defense table. Your Honor, by her own admission, Miss Quinlan completed high school. It was her personal decision not to attend college, and Mr. Lancaster is not able to predict the future. We don't know what Miss Quinlan will be doing next year, or for the rest of her life. Sustained, the judge said. Mr. Lancaster, stick with present day, please. Of course, Your Honor. But instead of present day, Garrett said, turning to look directly at Bill Bradley, maybe we should go back to the night of January 15th instead. Garrett turned back to Alexandra, his voice softer now. Alexandra, do you feel comfortable telling the court what happened the night your parents and brother were killed? Objection, Bill Bradley said again, standing from the defense table and a bit more animated this time. Garrett understood the man's aggression. At all costs, the state of Virginia did not want this court to hear the details Alexandra was about to provide. Miss Quinlan is not on trial for murder, Bradley said. I think it would be an injustice to make her relive that night. An injustice, Garrett said with more force to his words than Bill Bradley had put behind his own. Now, suddenly, the state of Virginia is concerned about injustice? With all due respect, Bill, that's the biggest pile of crap that's ever been dumped in a courtroom. Gentlemen, the judge said, slamming his gavel to bring the courtroom to order, arguments come to me, not to each other. Do you understand? My apologies, Your Honor, Garrett said. I understand. Your objection is overruled, Mr. Bradley. Hearing Miss Quinlan's testimony about the night her family was killed is paramount to this case, and the court will allow it. Bradley sat, and Garrett made eye contact with Alexandra. You sure you can do this? He asked as if he were talking just to her, but made sure the jury could hear him. Alexandra nodded. I am. Okay, let's talk about what happened that night. McIntosh, Virginia, January 15th, 2013, 12:26 a.m. A loud noise lifted her eyelids. It sounded like something large had fallen on the hardwood floor outside her room, and Alexandra's freshly woken mind conjured an image of the grandfather clock, which had stood for the entirety of her life in the corner of the second-story hallway, tipping over and splintering against the floor. But something about the noise was curious. The sound had not come and gone. It lingered. That's when her mind became fully alert and she understood what it was: the sound of a shotgun. She knew the sound well from the morning she spent pheasant hunting with her dad. He hadn't yet allowed her to tag along on a deer hunt, but pheasants were a Saturday morning staple. Alexandra's job had been to keep track of their dog. She used the whistle to call Zeke back if he wandered too far off in front of them, and she'd watch as he snaked through the tall reeds, listening for the crunching of the stalks to stop, indicating that Zeke had found a bird. That's when she'd yell to her dad, "On point, Dad, on point." The wild flapping of wings would come next, as Zeke flushed the pheasant from its hiding spot, and then she'd hear the sound of her father's shotgun. It was always just a single round. She'd never, in all the years pheasant hunting with her dad, heard him fire twice at the same bird. He never missed. And that was how she recognized the noise that had woken her. Out in the cornfields, her father's shotgun gave off a single blast, but then lingered. The report of the gun remained for a few seconds, as if it were a living thing, before it dissipated. Alexandra sat up in bed now as the remnants of the blast slowly faded. But then another came, and she knew something was terribly wrong. Pushing the covers to the side, she jumped from bed and ran to her bedroom door. She placed her temple against the door frame and stared out into the hallway. Her vision was blurry. Without her glasses, but she dared not go back to the nightstand to retrieve them. Through the fuzziness, she saw that the grandfather clock hadn't fallen to the ground, as her groggy mind had first imagined. It stood where it always had, in the corner of the hallway. For the encapsulated moment when she peeked from her bedroom, her home was calm and quiet. The spindled railing that ran the length of the second-story hallway overlooked the dark foyer below, and everything seemed normal. Then she saw Raymond emerge from his room and walk down the hallway, away from Alexandra and toward her parents' bedroom. He, too, was blurry to her nearsighted eyes, and though she didn't know it then, Alexandra would later be grateful the scene she was about to witness was unfocused and distorted. When Raymond reached their parents' bedroom, he stopped and pushed the door open. A third gunshot blast reverberated through the house. The blast threw Raymond onto his back where he lay and did not move. Alexandra startled into action. Her knees shook as she pulled away from her door and ran to her bedroom window, pushed it open, and fumbled with the screen until it fell into the night and landed on the walkway below. She thought about jumping, but it was cold and dark and a long way down to where the screen lay on the ground. Then, for some inexplicable reason, she again thought of the grandfather clock standing at the end of the hallway and just outside her bedroom door. When thinking back on that night, she had never been able to explain why the image of the clock came to her in that moment, or why she had imagined it was the clock that had fallen and made the original noise that woke her. All she knew was that she had to get to it. She ran from the open window and into the hallway. Instinctually, she twisted the lock on the inside handle of her bedroom door before quietly closing it. It was a trick she had learned since turning 17, locking her bedroom door from the hallway. It was a way to fool her parents into thinking she was studying in her room when she really had snuck out to meet up with her friends. With her bedroom door locked, Alexandra turned and ran to the place she always used to go during games of hide-and-seek when she was little. She slipped behind the grandfather clock, noticing that the hiding spot was much smaller than she remembered. The last time she'd taken refuge there was at least 3 years earlier, and her charge toward adulthood had never been more apparent. Years earlier, she had effortlessly crept behind the clock to hide from her brother. Now, she attempted to wedge herself there to save her life. Just as she settled into the hiding spot, she heard footsteps on the hardwood floor. Alexandra did not dare peek around the edge of the clock to steal a glance down the hallway. She could see the spindles of the railing that overlooked the first-floor foyer, and a sliver of hardwood that ran along it. She saw the shooter's shadow as it emerged from her parents' room, poured through the spindles of the railing, and disappeared over the edge. The shadow paused, and Alexandra held her breath to stay as silent as possible. Finally, She heard footsteps again, as the shooter hurried toward Alexandra's bedroom and the grandfather clock that stood just a few feet from her bedroom door. Had she not acted quickly, Alexandra would be in her room now, either lying in bed or still frozen and staring through the crack between the door and the frame. She wished she'd found the courage to jump from her bedroom window. There was a row of thick bushes that might have broken her fall, but if they hadn't, her mind churned. Then she would have injured herself and been unable to run away, stuck on the back walkway and staring up at the shooter as the barrel of the shotgun drifted out her open window and pointed down at her. At least here in her hiding place she had a chance. At least crammed behind the grandfather clock she might survive the night. She heard the rattle of her bedroom door handle, then a cracking noise as the shooter kicked at the door. Once, and then again until the door burst open. Behind the grandfather clock, tucked as tightly as possible in the corner hallway, Alexandra squeezed her eyes closed. The pounding inside her chest caused her whole body to tremble. She didn't dare move, and she tried not to breathe as she heard first knocking, and then the squeak of her closet door opening. A moment of silence followed before she heard the loud, thundering footsteps as the shooter raced across her bedroom to the open window. The whine of the window opening fully came next, followed by more footsteps as the shooter ran out of the bedroom and down the hallway, away from Alexandra's hiding spot. The stomping continued down the stairs until she heard the front door open, and then the house grew eerily silent. Chapter 6. District Courthouse, Friday, September 27th, 2013, 10:32 a.m. The courtroom was silent, and Garrett allowed it to remain that way, not just for effect this time, but to allow the gravity of what the jurors were hearing to settle in. A 17-year-old girl had taken refuge in an old hiding spot from her youth. The split-second decision had saved her life. "Are you doing okay?" Garrett asked. Alexandra nodded. "Yes. I think I speak for everyone in this courtroom in telling you that it takes a lot of courage to retell this story." Garrett noticed several jurors nod in agreement. "The shooter went to your room but couldn't find you. What happened after the shooter ran out of your bedroom?" "He ran down the hallway away from where I was hiding, then down the stairs. I stayed hidden behind the clock but peeked out to look over the railing. Our upstairs hallway overlooks the front foyer. I saw the front door open and the shooter run outside." "The shooter ran out of the house?" "Yes." It's safe to say that the whole night is confusing for all of us in this courtroom to understand. Yet in that moment you actually had a clear impression of what happened. You knew why the shooter ran out of the house, didn't you? "Yes. I fooled him." "How so?" "I opened my bedroom window because I was thinking of jumping, but I chickened out. It was too high. So I ran and hid behind the clock that's just outside my bedroom. Before I did, though, I locked my bedroom door from the hallway." "From the hallway outside your room?" "Yes. One of my friends showed me how to do it. You have to twist the handle first, then lock the door before you close it. It was a trick to make my parents think I was studying in my room when really, I was out with my friends." Garrett smiled. "A trick that saved your life. But you weren't trying to fool your parents that night. You were trying to fool the shooter." "Yeah. I thought that if I locked the door, the shooter would think I was inside and might not look for me elsewhere. When the shooter went into my room, I guess he thought I had actually jumped out the window and ran away. When I saw the shooter run out the front door, I figured he was chasing after me, or at least running to the back of my house to see if I was still there. So, at that point, you were still tucked in your hiding place when the shooter ran from the house. But from that spot, you could see the front door through the upstairs railing. You noticed something after the shooter left your house, is that right?" "Yes." "What did you notice?" "My dad's gun." "Where was the gun?" "In the foyer downstairs." "The shooter had dropped it before he left the house. Is that correct?" "Yes." Garrett walked back to the prosecution's table, opened the gun case that rested on the floor, and lifted the shotgun that had been used to kill Alexandra's family. "Is this the gun?" "Yes." "And it belonged to your father?" "Yes." "You know this gun well, don't you?" "Yes." "And you know how to use it?" "Yes." "How did you learn to shoot a 12-gauge shotgun?" "My dad taught me when he took me pheasant hunting on Saturday mornings." "What did you do after you noticed that the shooter had left the gun?" "I slid out from behind the grandfather clock and ran down the stairs to retrieve the gun." "You told me something that I found amazingly interesting, and I want you to share it with the court now. Why was it so important for you to get the gun? Some might think it more natural to run to your parents' room to check on them." "There were only 3 shots," Alexandra said. "My dad's 12-gauge shotgun holds 2 cartridges. I heard the first 2 shots. Those were the ones that woke me up. Then," her voice cracked momentarily, Alexandra swallowed hard and righted herself, "I heard a 3rd shot when my brother was killed. I knew the gun had been reloaded in order to shoot my brother, which meant there was still a live cartridge in the chamber." "So you retrieved the gun for protection?" "Yes. I grabbed the gun just in case the shooter came back, knowing that there was still a single shot remaining." "Yes." "Smart girl," Garrett said. "After you grabbed the shotgun from the foyer, what did you do?" "I ran up to my parents' room." "And what did you do next?" "I sat down on the floor in front of their bed and waited with my dad's shotgun on my lap, just in case." "Just in case," Garrett said, walking to the jury box while still holding the shotgun. "Just in case the shooter came back." "Yes." He looked at the jury members. "The shooter never came back, but the Macintosh police showed up. I'm not sure which was worse." "Objection!" Bill Bradley yelled. "Withdrawn, Your Honor. I have no more questions for Alexandra." "Mr. Bradley?" the judge asked. Bill Bradley closed his eyes and shook his head.